Well, good day to you. It is a little after 10:30 a.m. on April the 19th, 2025, and I hope wherever you are having a wonderful Easter holiday. And if you're someone who likes to go to church on Easter, hopefully you have a great church service tomorrow. If you are someone who just likes to sit around and get some R&R, perhaps soak in some sunshine, well, I hope you have a great day doing that too, or at least spending some time with family and friends and eating some good food. Now, or all the above. Anyway, but wherever you are, whenever you're listening to this video, I want to welcome you to Search for Signs. My name is Gary Willing. And if you have heard these videos before, you already knew my name, and I want to welcome you back. But whether you are a novice at this, what do I talk about Maitreya, or you consider yourself to be an expert among experts about Maitreya, about his priorities, about the miracle signs, and that kind of thing, I do think the best thing to do is to read more about this information for yourself at some point. If you're new, do some investigating. See if there's any truth to this information. Check out some of the information on some of the websites that I provided links for in the description portion of these videos. But you can also check out the Share International site. Link is at the very top, and get the best background information in there than you can anywhere else. You want to come back and join the discussion, post a comment, let me know what you think, or you could ask a question or two by posting your question in the comment section, or you can email me that question to searchforsigns@mail.com, and then I'll try to answer that question in the next video. All right, now, one thing you might not know about Easter, I mean, everybody knows about Easter. Most of us celebrate Easter, of course, because most of the people that listen to these videos have some kind of background in Christian beliefs or whatever, or at least celebrate the holidays of Christianity, right? But what you might not know is that according to one of these masters, Easter will eventually be the most revered holiday all around the world. It will even surpass the importance on the holiday calendar as Christmas does today. And it's not for commercial reasons as Christmas is celebrated today is in such a commercialized way. Easter will be celebrated for a totally different reason and will be revered and seen with such reverence that it's not even seen in today. Now, most Christians think it's a holiday just for them, but it will eventually be a holiday for the entire world because of the truth about what Easter really means. The New Testament and a lot of what was written in the New Testament is symbolic. And there were some events in Jesus' life, like the birth, the baptism, transfiguration, the crucifixion, and the resurrection, which historically actually, according to the Ageless Wisdom Teachings, happened, but they were written in such a way to symbolize the path of return that we will all take to eventually become a master. And so Easter represents, from the Ageless Wisdom standpoint, the time in the event when somebody becomes a master and realizes their own divinity and is able to manifest it perfectly as a master would and become a fully resurrected master. It's also been said in the Bible by Christians that Jesus conquered death and will eventually be the only one that will ever conquer death in that way. The truth of the matter is that not only Jesus, but all these masters have conquered death. And then also the truth is that every single one of us will eventually conquer death in the same way, because we will all become masters just as they are now masters in that, as they are today. Now, Jesus once said, when asked about the miracles that he was performing at the time, his response was, "Greater things than this shall you do yourself." So he wasn't just speaking to that person, he was speaking to the whole world about that truth, that we will do exactly what Jesus did and conquer death and eventually become a master. And that's the whole point of Jesus's life, really, from the Ageless Wisdom standpoint. And again, Easter will be revered in such a way because it has to do with the manifestation of the divinity of all of humanity. Far different from what we celebrate it as today. So hopefully that gives you guys a little bit more information on Easter. Now, the other thing you might not know anything about me. You might not know that there was a time that I actually didn't know anything about this information. And you might not know that I didn't always think that this information was true. So Again, there was a time that I didn't know anything about this information, and I had to find it just as you have stumbled across it for you. And the way that I found out about this information was I read it in a book for the first time, Maitreya's Mission Volume 2, written by Benjamin Crème. And I found that book in a bookstore. And when I read it for the first time, I didn't agree with it. Now, I didn't make great strides to tell everybody about how much I hated it. The internet was really nowhere to speak of when I first picked up that book, so I couldn't post it on any message boards or any social media page or anything like this saying how much I hated the book. I just didn't like the book. And I put the book down. And what happened was, over the next few weeks, I would think a little bit about what I read and how much I didn't like what Benjamin Crème said or whatever. And then there would be this little heartfelt response that would come on the heels of me saying to myself how much I hated the book. Just read a little bit more. And then I would forget about that, and I would get on with my day, and I'd be doing something else, and I would think about what I read in the book and how much I didn't like it. And then I would have that same heartfelt response. Just read a little bit more. And then eventually I did exactly what the heartfelt response was telling me to do. I read a little bit more about this, and I picked up the book and I read it. And then I read a little bit more. And then I read a little bit more. And then I read a little bit more. And then eventually it turned from a general interest to totally being an obsession. And I couldn't put the book down for well over a year. And I just read it for myself. I internalized what I was reading, perhaps talked about with it with some close friends and family. But other than that, I didn't do anything with it. And then I read something about transmission meditation in one of the books. And I took it to the next level, and I reached out to the Atlanta group here, and I started doing transmission meditation with them. And while I was doing transmission meditation, I started to read the Share International magazines that were on the coffee table. And as they were all getting up and leaving, I would pick up a few of them and I would read here or there, blah, 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 blah. I'd read some of Benjamin Creme's master's articles. I'd read some of the Q&A, but I would also read some letters that people wrote in to Share International about their Maitreya experiences. And again, I still didn't really know what to make of it. I was just kind of reading it with some general vague kind of interest. Well, anyway, one night I was talking with this woman named Phyllis who had been doing transmission meditation for years at that point and was very knowledgeable about this information. And like I said, I didn't know anything about it really to speak of. And I asked her, what is this? What are these things that I'm reading here, right? In the letters to the editor. And she goes, oh, well, people have been meeting Maitreya. And he's appeared however he appears, as a woman, as a man, as a this, that, and the other. And that didn't make much sense at the time to me, just as it probably doesn't make much sense to you who hear me talk about my experiences with Maitreya. But I was kind of intrigued by it. And then she told me about some of her experiences. I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. And then I would pick up the magazine again and I kind of read it again. Well, anyway, I eventually remembered an experience that I had before I knew anything about this information. And I've talked about this story and this experience from time to time throughout these videos that I put up. And I wanted to talk about it again with everybody because I think it's an extraordinary story. And I've seen the look on people's faces when I share this story because it is quite an extraordinary experience. And I consider myself to be very fortunate to be the one that not only had that experience, but also to be able to be the one that can share it with people because it gives me such conviction to say this because I know how true it was. I don't have any evidence. I don't have any photographs of the phone booth after it happened because I didn't have a phone on me that could take photos because there really wasn't cell phones around for that. There was no smartphones, right? I mean, I guess there were cell phones, but no smartphones at the time. But I didn't have one. I didn't even have a cell phone. That's the reason why this experience happened because I had to use a payphone. But the thing of it is that, I just hope that you listen to this story with a little bit of open mind, but I also hope that maybe, possibly, it'll trigger a memory that you have, just as it did when I started hearing about these experiences that people were having with Maitreya. It triggered a memory that I had totally forgotten about. But the story goes like this. My aspiration getting out of school was to become a background musician for a singer or a band or something like that. I didn't want to be the one that was on the center of the stage with the spotlight singing to the crowd. I can't really sing in public for I can't really sing. I sing okay for myself, but I would never, you would never see me on the stage singing. I'm just not that kind of person. But anyway, but I played an instrument. I played the bass, and I always dreamed of being the background musician on one of these bands or whatever. Anyway, so I moved to Atlanta with the aspiration of becoming one of those background musicians. And I got some gigs here or there. Didn't really have a lot of friends in Atlanta at the time and didn't really know what I was doing or where I was going in Atlanta, but did some gigs with some people. And one of the gigs that I was on, this drummer told me that he was about to go to Japan with a group called the 3 Degrees out of Philadelphia. And I was like, wow, that's great. And then a few days later, he calls me and he goes, hey, Gary, do you have a passport? I said, yeah, why? And he goes, well, the bass player that they wanted to use doesn't have a passport, and they don't think he'll be able to get it in time for the tour. So if you have a passport and you can present it to them, you got the gig. I was like, really? I was like, all right. So I went down to the place, showed them my passport, and they go, okay, you got the gig. And then we ended up doing some rehearsals here in Atlanta. And then next thing you know, I'm on a plane jet setting over to Japan for the first time in my life. I had never really left the country. And here I am going into the other side of the planet but with this band. I was like, this is great. Had a blast. I love Japan. I love the Japanese culture. I love the Japanese people more than anything, and just had a wonderful time. But halfway through the tour, I was backstage, like I was after every concert that we had, and the singers that were there, the 3 Degrees, weren't really that famous in the United States, but they were famous overseas because they had toured overseas many times, and they had released some albums since then overseas, and were pretty famous. And there were some times that they actually, when I was there, that people would recognize them on the street. There was also, I think, at this show, and this woman won a ticket backstage on a radio contest or something. So this woman got backstage. I think they told me that she had won this ticket backstage on this radio show, and she was talking with them, and she didn't really understand English, and she couldn't speak English, and they spoke a little Japanese, so she was able to understand some of the things that they were saying, I guess. Anyway, so then she pulls out this notebook and a pen, and she hands it to one of the singers, and the lady signs her name, and then she hands it to the other one, and the other singer signs her name, and then she hands it to the third singer, and she signs her name. And then I'm standing right next to the singer, and she hands me the notebook and the pen, and I'm like, no, don't worry about it. And she goes, no, seriously, I want you to, she didn't say it seriously. She just kind of like nodded again, like, no, I want you to sign your name. I was like, okay. So I open up the book, find a blank page, and I'm thinking about what I'm going to write. And what comes to me is, why don't I just sign a peace sign, a heart, and a happy face? And then I sign my name. And you've never seen my signature, I'm sure, but when I sign my name, ever since I've been in school, it is literally like a doctor signing his name on a prescription. I mean, it was really messy. So anyway, so I signed peace sign, heart sign, and a happy face, and signed my name really messy. Handed it to the lady. She said, thank you. Didn't think much of it after that. A couple, 3 times during the tour, somebody else asked me for my autograph, and I signed it with a peace sign and a heart and a happy face. Well, anyway, I got back to Atlanta a day or two after I got over my jet lag. I had to go out and find another job. I was waiting on another tour to come my way, and eventually did. And I went to go meet the guitar player who was collecting the passports for that tour. He told me where to go, told me what time to meet him. Well, I got lost. I got like really lost. And if you know anything about the geography of Atlanta, he was in East Cobb. I live in Cobb County, but he's in East Cobb, and he was about 10 miles away from me. And at the time, it would probably taken me about 15 minutes to get there if I knew what I was doing. Now, with all the traffic, it would probably take me 30 to 45 minutes to get there. So anyway, because Atlanta's just grown up a lot more since then. Anyway, but I got way lost, and I found myself in Marietta, which is in Cobb County, but I was getting toward downtown Marietta. Well, anyway, there's a KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, known as the Big Chicken. It's a local landmark, and there's this big wooden chicken edifice in front of this KFC. And the big chicken is about 50 feet tall. And it's this wooden chicken with this beak that moves and the eyes move and stuff. And I guess, like I said, people come and take pictures of it all the time. But anyway, it's a local landmark. But anyway, I was trying to get to East Cobb, didn't know what I was doing, got turned around, and then I found myself right next to the big chicken, and then there's this gas station right there with a payphone. So I pull into the parking lot. I get out of my car, grab a quarter, go to the payphone to call Harry to let him know, A, I'm going to be late, and B, how do I get there from where I'm at, right? So I drop the quarter in the phone. I pick up the receiver of the phone, and the payphone looked just like this kind of payphone here. And as I'm dialing his number, I'm looking at around the phone, and I'm like, my gosh, there's a lot of graffiti on this phone. And so waiting for him to pick up the phone, and right before he picks up the phone, I see this graffiti that's written just like this. Okay, it says, to Gary, a heart sign, a peace sign, a happy face. It says, still alive and well, and there's a cross with these two little hoo-hoos going up there like that, just like this, and it was signed the Christ. And I'm reading this thing, and then he picks up the phone, and he goes, hello, and I said, hey, Harry, this is Gary. Man, I'm late because I don't know where I am. And he gives me directions, and I'm writing it down. And then I hang up the phone, and I look at this thing again, and I go, well, who's Gary? He signs this name just like me. Forget about it. Get in my car, drive to where I'm going, give him my passport, yada, yada, yada. Don't think anything of it. And this is an important part of this story, because I do think that most of you guys and gals who are listening to this have probably met Maitreya and totally forgotten about him, or had an experience with Maitreya and totally forgotten about it, had a dream experience perhaps, or even been saved by an accident by one of these masters and totally forgot about it. Anyway, just like me, I totally forgot about this experience until that night in transmission meditation when they were all talking about these Maitreya experiences. I just started reading them in this magazine. And then I turn to Phyllis and I tell her this story about this payphone. And then I look at her face, and her face is just dropped because she's dumbfounded about it. And she goes, you got to share this with the whole group. I'm like, why? And she goes, this is incredible. And I'm like, it is? And I was still kind of in denial about it. She goes, yeah. And I said, okay. So I tell them the same thing I just told everybody here on this video, that, you know, I traveled overseas, signed my name with a peace sign, a heart, and happy face, and then it was written on the phone just like this. And then I saw the look on everybody else's face, and they were like, oh my gosh. And Phyllis eventually phoned Ben in England, and he said, oh yes, that was Maitreya, of course. So yada, yada, yada. Now I'm speaking to you guys about it. So that experience changed my life, but it did not have the significance that it has for me today, because I didn't know anything about Maitreya. And that's why I'm sharing this with you, in hopes that you remember something that perhaps had happened to you that could have been a Maitreya experience. Now, the other thing that I want to say before I hang up on this video, that's a payphone reference, is that the times that I've shared this story with Christians who are very devout in their faith, who don't agree with anything that I have to say about Maitreya, when I share with them this story, they have the same expression on their face that Phyllis did. And sometimes I tell them the backstory about Maitreya, and other times I don't. But how they can relate to that miracle too, not knowing that I don't have the same religious beliefs that they do. And when people, just as I did, read this information and were totally turned off by it, it's an ideological thing that you have to work through in order to understand the truth of this information. I cannot stress this enough. I don't try to tell you that and to try to convince you of this, but what I'm telling you about Maitreya is true. The experiences that I've had with Maitreya actually did happen. I'm not making them up. And if you listen to the video that I put up 5 or 6 years ago where I talked about this payphone story, it's basically the same. It didn't change. It didn't become more grandiose. It's basically the same. And so the reason why it's basically the same is because I'm telling you something that actually did happen. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, thank you for letting me share this with you. I love you guys, and I look forward to putting up videos in the very near future. You have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Take care. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.